The council hall of the Suli Empire was a grand place. Its dome stretched high above, filled with glowing threads of light that moved like rivers across the ceiling. Hundreds of eyes of many different shapes and colors watched the scene below. The day was supposed to be routine, an open meeting between the Suli royal family and selected envoys from the new world called Earth. Yet no one could have guessed what would happen. Jonah Rami stood at the edge of the hall. He was not a diplomat, not a soldier, and not a noble. He was an engineer from Earth, someone sent to help repair Suli starships after a recent engine crisis. He was tall, though not as tall as the Suli, and his dark hair was tied back to keep from falling into his eyes. He wore plain clothes, nothing like the shining robes of the nobles. To him, this was just another day of listening while others argued about laws and trade. At the center of the room stood Princess Lyra. She was known across the empire as proud and careful. Her skin shimmered faintly like pale silver. Her voice was calm and even, and her eyes glowed softly with the green tint of her people. Many saw her as a symbol of tradition. She was expected to follow the rules of her world and never step beyond them. That was why her next words shook the hall like thunder. "I wish you were my husband, human," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber. For one long moment, there was silence. No one moved. No one breathed. The sound of her words seemed to echo off the glowing dome itself. Jonah froze where he stood, his mind empty. He wondered if he had misheard. Surely she had not said that. Surely she had not spoken to him, but the princess was looking directly at Jonah. Her eyes held no doubt, no play, no humor. She meant it. Gasps broke out from the crowd. A noblewoman dropped her jeweled tablet and it clattered to the ground. A pair of military officers muttered in alarm. Some covered their mouths with their hands. Others simply stared. The idea was unthinkable. Marriage between species was forbidden in the empire. It was not just law, it was tradition older than memory. To break it was to insult generations of history. And yet here in the open hall, the princess herself had confessed such a wish. Jonah felt his throat dry. He wanted to say something, but no words came. He was an engineer, not a speaker. He fixed broken engines, not broken laws. His hands knew tools and wires, not politics. Still, every eye was on him now, waiting. Before he could speak, a loud voice cut through the air. It belonged to Minister Kale, an elder of the council. He slammed his hand on the table. "This is madness," he shouted. "This is a scandal against our blood and our ancestors. A princess cannot speak such words." Others joined. "She is under some influence," cried one. "The human has bewitched her," shouted another. "This is a trick, a plan of Earth to gain our throne." Jonah's heart raced. He raised his hands weakly. I didn't..." He tried to explain, but his voice was drowned out by the storm of protests. Princess Lyra stood firm. "No one has bewitched me," she said. Her voice remained calm, though her hands trembled slightly at her sides. "I speak from my own will. This human has done nothing but his duty. It is I who choose to speak. If that shames you, then I will bear it." Her words only deepened the shock. Jonah could see the ripple of reactions: anger, fear, disbelief, and even curiosity in a few faces. Some younger nobles leaned forward, fascinated, while older ones turned away in disgust. Jonah wanted to disappear. He thought of his small quarters on the Earth envoy ship, where tools and machines surrounded him, where problems were simple: broken parts, power lines, circuits. He wished for that simplicity now. Instead, he stood in the middle of a storm he had not asked for. The hallmaster struck a gong, calling for order. The heavy sound rolled across the chamber, forcing the voices to fall silent. "The council will hold an emergency session," the master declared. "This matter cannot be ignored. Until then, the human will remain under watch." Two guards stepped closer to Jonah. Their hands rested on their spears, though they did not point them at him. Jonah lifted his palms. "I didn't plan this," he said quietly, though he knew few were listening. Lyra moved a step forward. "If you place blame, place it on me," she said. I spoke the words. No law can accuse him of forcing them from my mouth. The counselors looked at each other, muttering in low tones. It was rare for anyone to challenge them so openly. Rarer still for a princess. The hall felt heavy with tension, as though the very air might shatter. At last the master spoke again. "This court will close for today. Tomorrow we meet again in judgment. Guards, escort the human to secure quarters. Princess Lyra, remain with your family." Jonah was led away under 1,000 stares. Some were filled with hate, others with confusion, and a very few with hidden respect. He kept his head down, his mind racing. Why had she said those words? Was it a plan, a test, or something else? He had no answer. That night, locked in a guarded chamber, Jonah sat on the edge of his bed. He rubbed his hands together, trying to calm himself. His whole life he had believed in simple truths. Machines break, people repair, problems can be solved. But this? A princess's confession before the whole empire? He could not repair this with tools. Across the city, in her private chambers, Princess Lyra sat alone. Her attendants whispered outside her door, too afraid to enter. She stared out at the shining spires of her world. She knew what she had done could not be undone. Yet she felt no regret. For reasons she kept to herself, she had spoken truth. She had seen in the human something her own people lacked: steadiness, honesty, and a heart that did not hide behind masks. For that she was willing to risk scandal. The stage was set. The empire would wake tomorrow to rumors and debates. Ministers would sharpen their words, and soldiers would sharpen their blades. And Jonah Rami, a simple human engineer, would stand at the center of it all, whether he wished it or not. The confession had been made. The galaxy would never be the same. The news of Princess Lyra's words spread faster than anyone had imagined. Holoscreens flashed her confession across the Suli Empire, and within hours every major city and station had seen it. "I wish you were my husband, human," repeated countless times, each echo twisting the public's reaction differently. Some were shocked, some were amused, some were angry, and a few, quietly intrigued. Jonah Rami could hardly imagine that one sentence would start a ripple that reached across stars. He sat in the small chamber where the council had placed him under guard. The door was thick and reinforced, but the human mind, he reminded himself, could still feel trapped even behind steel. His communicator buzzed. It was from his Earth colleagues, sending messages full of concern and advice. "Stay calm. Don't speak unless necessary. Remember, the laws are very different there," one message read. Jonah sighed. He had never wanted attention. He had never wanted to be part of politics. He simply wanted to fix engines and keep the ship flying. Now he was caught in the center of an empire's uproar. Outside, the city was alive with rumors. Hollow posters asked, "Is this love or treason?" Street corners buzzed with speculation. Merchants whispered to customers. Citizens debated quietly in homes, markets, and transport lines. Suli law was clear. Cross-species marriage was forbidden. Yet the princess had said she wished it. How could the empire respond? The backlash began in subtle ways. Counselors who once nodded politely at Lyra now frowned openly. Ministers whispered in shadowed corridors. Rumors of human spies circulated. Jonah, even confined, could feel the invisible pressure of suspicion pressing on him. The first confrontation came in the form of an unexpected visit. A stern Suli diplomat named Arvin entered Jonah's guarded chamber. He was tall, heavily armored, and moved with the deliberate calm of someone used to authority. "You are the human the princess spoke of," Arvin said, his voice low but sharp. "Do you understand the consequences of her words?" Jonah nodded cautiously. I didn't ask for this. I didn't say anything. I'm just an engineer." Arvin's eyes narrowed. "Your species does not understand our customs. Do you think this matters? The council may demand your exile, or worse if you do not act wisely." Jonah swallowed. "I only want to do my job. I don't want trouble." Arvin gave him a long, studying look, then turned and left. The message was clear. The Empire would test him whether he wanted it or not. Meanwhile, Princess Lyra faced her own storm. Her family, high in the council, debated fiercely. Some demanded punishment for Jonah, claiming he had manipulated her. Others accused her of breaking centuries of tradition. She refused to retract her words. "I speak truth," she told them. "This human has done nothing but act with honesty. I trust him. That is enough." Her words were not popular, but they planted a seed of doubt among the younger nobles. Some had always believed that the empire was too rigid, too stuck in old rules. Perhaps Lyra's courage showed a different way. The public reaction mirrored the council. Hollow news outlets split into factions. One channel called Jonah a stranger threatening our empire. Another called him a human who saves lives, not breaks law. The debate filled every home station and shuttle across the Suli star lanes. Jonah learned of this through a small communicator device left in his room. He read the messages silently. Some were hateful, accusing him of seducing a princess to gain power. Others were admiring, praising his calm actions during the engine repairs he had done weeks before. It amazed him. His simple work now carried politica. The city of Suli buzzed with tension. Citizens whispered in markets, stations, and transport hubs. The news of Princess Lyra's words and Jonah Rami's calm courage had spread across the empire. Some admired the human. Others distrusted him. Yet everyone agreed on one thing. Something had shifted. Jonah had barely slept the night before. His mind raced with thoughts of the recent hearing, the protests, and the subtle, wary glances from council members. He was an engineer, not a hero, yet somehow he had become a symbol of hope and controversy. He spent the early morning checking the small communicator the princess had secretly given him, hoping for instructions or reassurance. None came. He understood. The test was coming, and he would face it alone. The summons arrived mid-morning. A council envoy arrived at Jonah's quarters and escorted him to the high tower overlooking the city. He walked with his head low but his mind alert. The tower's doors opened to a platform where the princess stood, waiting. Her eyes held a quiet intensity. "You have a choice, Jonah," she said, her voice soft but firm. "The council will test you. You may refuse, but refusing will bring consequences for both of us. For the Empire. For your people. For mine," Jonah nodded slowly. "I don't want trouble," he said. "But I can't walk away if someone needs help." "That's all I know." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then your choice is made. Come with me." They moved through the palace corridors and out into the city. Crowds had gathered, curious and tense. Soldiers kept them at bay, but citizens craned their necks to see. Above them, hollows projected words from the council. "The human will face the test of service." Let all watch. Jonah's stomach tightened. A test of service? He had repaired starship engines, power grids, and satellites. But what did the Empire consider worthy of a test? He did not have time to wonder, for Lyra gestured toward a shuttle waiting below. "The orbital habitat," she explained as they boarded, "has suffered critical failures. Tens of thousands live there, miners, engineers, families. If systems fail, many could die. The Council believes this is your chance to prove loyalty." Jonah nodded. The shuttle lifted off, leaving the bustling city below. The human had faced emergencies before, but never one with the eyes of an empire watching. As they approached the habitat, alarms flashed across the control panels. The docking bay doors refused to open. Sparks leapt from the control terminals. Jonah did not hesitate. He grabbed tools from his kit, moved into the corridor, and began work. The habitat's interior was chaotic. Power lines hung loose, warning lights blinked red, and the air smelled faintly of ozone. Workers scurried about, unsure of what to do. Jonah assessed the situation quickly. He could not fix everything at once, but he could prioritize the systems that controlled air and gravity, the most critical for life. He started with the main air conduits. Using his hands and tools, he rerouted power, bypassing damaged circuits and stabilizing the flow. Sparks flew. Warning sirens screamed. A loose panel swung dangerously, but Jonah grabbed it just in time. Around him, Suli engineers watched in awe. None had attempted such improvisation before. Humans, they thought, were clever but reckless. Jonah was proving them wrong. Midway through the repairs, a loud explosion shook the corridor. The extremists who opposed Lyra's words and human influence had planted sabotage. Fires broke out along the maintenance tunnels. Jonah did not hesitate. He grabbed a fire suppression unit, quickly dousing the flames before they reached critical conduits. One of the Suli engineers, a young woman named Tira, froze with fear. Jonah grabbed her arm. "Stay with me. Follow my steps. We'll be fine," he said calmly. She nodded, trusting the stranger despite the chaos. Together they worked to stabilize the failing power junctions. Above them, the hollows showed the council and citizens watching in real time. Every move, every decision, every breath was observed. Jonah knew this, yet he did not let it distract him. He focused on what he could control: wires, valves, pressure gauges. He moved with purpose, teaching others to move with purpose. Slowly, systems came back online. Gravity stabilized. Airflow returned to normal. By mid-afternoon, the immediate danger had passed, but the work was not complete. The habitat was damaged, its repairs delicate. Jonah coordinated teams of humans and Suli engineers, sharing techniques, showing how simple adjustments could prevent future failures. The young Suli workers began to mimic his methods, realizing that practical solutions could save lives more than strict rules alone. During a brief pause, Lyra approached him. Her eyes glowed softly. You see, Jonah, your work is more than machines. You teach courage, calm, and trust. That is what the Empire has been missing. Jonah shook his head, exhausted. I just do what I can, he said. I don't think about empires. I think about people, she smiled. And that is why I spoke yesterday. That is why I trust you. That is why. Some will come to see that humans can do more than we feared. Night fell over the orbital habitat. Lights from the city below glimmered like stars in the darkness of space. Jonah finally allowed himself a moment to rest, leaning against a stable console. He looked at the faces of the Suli engineers, young and old, tired but alive. For the first time, he understood the ripple his actions could create. The next morning, the council convened again. The chamber was tense. Citizens crowded the streets outside, eager for news. The councilors spoke in low tones, debating how to judge a human who had just saved tens of thousands of lives. Many were reluctant to admit it, but the evidence was clear. Jonah's calm courage, his ingenuity, and his practical skill had prevented disaster. A few council members whispered, Perhaps we have underestimated humans. Others muttered, This changes nothing. The law is still the law. Jonah stood quietly observing, aware that his actions had shifted perceptions even if slowly. He realized that his place in this empire was no longer that of a simple visitor. He had become a bridge, a living example of how humans could contribute not through conquest or power, but through honesty, courage, and practical skill. Later, in private, Lyra approached him again. The council may still question us. The extremists may still strike. But you have shown the heart of a human, Jonah. The world watches, and some will follow your example. Jonah nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had not sought this attention, yet he could not ignore it. He would continue to act with integrity, knowing that his simple actions could change minds, hearts, and perhaps even laws. The backlash was not gone. The Empire was still wary. The extremists still plotted. Yet in the quiet moments, Jonah felt something he had never expected. Hope. Hope that humans could show other worlds a new way, through courage, kindness, and steady hands. As the orbital habitat stabilized and the lights returned to normal, Jonah allowed himself a small smile. He had faced his first true test not with weapons or politics but with skill, calm, and care. And in doing so, he had begun to earn the trust of a people who had once seen him as an outsider. The Empire was watching. The council was divided. But one thing was certain. Jonah Rami, a human from a distant planet, was no longer invisible. He had proven that even a single human with honesty and courage could stand in the middle of a galaxy and change the way others saw the world. And the test was only the beginning. The council chamber was colder than Jonah expected. Massive pillars rose on either side, and the ceiling shimmered with soft, pale light. The hall was filled with the most powerful leaders of the Suli Empire. Outside, citizens crowded the streets, hollow screens broadcasting every moment of the trial. It seemed the entire world was watching. Jonah Rami walked slowly to the center of the chamber. He felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon him. Some were curious. Some were angry. Some were quietly supportive. He adjusted his sleeves and tried to focus on the facts. He was an engineer, a problem solver. He could not fight with words or political power, only with truth, calm, and honesty. Princess Lyra stood beside him. Her face was serene, though her green eyes glowed softly with intensity. She wore her ceremonial robe, but there was no stiffness to her stance. She radiated confidence, not arrogance. She had made her choice clear. She would support Jonah openly, no matter the consequences. The trial began with formal statements from the council. Minister Kale, tall and stern, spoke first. This human stands accused of influencing the princess, possibly violating our ancient laws. The council demands proof of intent and evidence of loyalty or deceit. Let all witnesses be heard. Jonah felt his stomach tighten. Witnesses. He had none of the authority or status the Suli expected. Yet he remembered the orbital habitat. He remembered the lives he had saved. That was truth. That was his witness. The first witness called was Tira, the young Suli engineer Jonah had saved during the orbital habitat crisis. She stepped forward, her green-tinted eyes wide but steady. I saw him act, she said. Not for reward, not for fame. He saved many of us. He did not speak of politics, only of what was right. He saved lives. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some council members nodded reluctantly, others scowled. Minister Kale leaned forward. And yet, can saving lives excuse breaking law and tradition? Tira shook her head. I do not know law, only what I saw. He did what anyone should do. Next, a diplomat from another system spoke. He had been present at the first hearing. Jonah Rami's actions were measured and careful. He does not manipulate. He calculates The morning sun rose over the capital city, casting long silver shadows across the streets. Jonah Rami stood quietly at the edge of the council hall's platform, watching the city wake. Today there would be no more hearings, no more speeches. Today he would face the true test. A communicator buzzed in his hand. Princess Lyra's voice came through softly but firmly. Jonah, the challenge has been assigned. The orbital research habitat is losing atmosphere. Thousands are inside. The council has given you tools and access, but the extremists will try to interfere. You must stabilize it. Save them or many will die. Jonah's heart pounded, but he did not show fear. He had faced emergencies before, but nothing like this. He packed his tools quickly. Scanners, energy conduits, portable repair units, and emergency stabilization devices. He reviewed the layout of the habitat in his mind, recalling the blueprints he had studied weeks before. Every hallway, every conduit, every pressure valve. The shuttle lifted off, its engines humming steadily as it carried Jonah and a team of Suli engineers to the damaged habitat. The orbital station hung in the void like a fragile jewel. Red lights flashed along its hull, warning of the failing systems inside. As they docked, alarms blared. A breach had already formed near the central environmental chamber. Oxygen levels were falling and gravity was fluctuating. People inside the habitat were in danger. Jonah did not hesitate. He grabbed a portable repair kit and entered the airlock first. Inside, the scene was chaos. Workers and families moved in confusion, unsure where to go. Some cried. Sparks leapt from damaged panels. Sections of the floor floated loose due to the shifting gravity. Jonah took a deep breath. "Stay calm," he shouted. "Follow my lead and no one will be harmed." Suli engineers looked at him in surprise. He was just a human, small compared to them, yet he spoke with authority born of knowledge and action. He began by stabilizing the main air conduits. With careful adjustments and jury-rigged reroutes, oxygen flow returned to critical sectors. Sparks danced around him, but he worked quickly, guiding Suli workers to move valves, secure panels, and monitor pressure levels. Then, a loud explosion echoed through a nearby corridor. The extremists had planted sabotage devices to disrupt the rescue. Jonah's first instinct was not panic. He grabbed a portable containment unit and doused the flames before they reached the air conduits. He pulled a young Suli engineer, Kira, out of harm's way. "Stay close!" he shouted. "We fix this together." As the team moved through the habitat, Jonah's quick thinking prevented disaster after disaster. He noticed a secondary pressure leak that would have gone unnoticed by most. Using tools from his kit, he improvised a temporary seal, buying time until a proper repair could be made. Engineers began to mimic his methods, amazed at his calm precision and adaptability. Hours passed and the situation worsened. One of the central valves threatened to rupture, which could have destroyed a large section of the habitat. Jonah crawled through a floating corridor, gripping panels and dodging debris. He reached the valve and assessed it. It was old, damaged, and unstable. No Suli engineer would risk opening it manually. Jonah studied the problem. He recalled a technique he had used back on Earth when a nuclear power unit had overpressurized. It was risky, but he had no choice. He rerouted auxiliary power to stabilize the valve's pressure, then slowly adjusted the main release. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, and the corridor trembled. Yet the valve held. The habitat stabilized and engineers cheered softly. But the challenge was far from over. One of the extremists triggered a secondary attack in the lower sectors, creating a simulated collapse. Jonah did not hesitate. He coordinated teams to evacuate civilians while he stabilized critical support systems. He worked tirelessly, moving through zero-gravity tunnels, fixing broken conduits, and guiding terrified workers to safety. By nightfall, the immediate crisis was resolved. The habitat's systems were stable, gravity was consistent, and oxygen flowed freely. The inhabitants, tired and frightened, had survived. Jonah finally allowed himself to breathe. He looked around at the Suli engineers who had worked with him. They were exhausted, but their eyes held respect, trust, and something new: admiration for the human who had saved them. Princess Lyra arrived shortly after the emergency was contained. She had watched from the observation deck, following the live feeds of Jonah's actions. She stepped beside him quietly, her eyes soft but intense. "You have done more than survive," she said. "You have saved lives. You have shown what humans can do when guided by heart and skill." Jonah shook his head. "I just did what I had to." "Anyone would have tried." Lyra smiled faintly. "Not anyone would. Not many would remain calm, think clearly, and protect others while chaos surrounds them. You are not just a human engineer, Jonah. You are something more. You show courage, wisdom, and care in ways our people have rarely seen." The shuttle returned to the capital, carrying Jonah and his team. News spread immediately. The human had faced the council's challenge, saved thousands of lives, and prevented disaster. Streets filled with citizens waving banners in admiration of his courage. Messages from across the empire reached the council, praising Jonah's actions. Even the extremists had been caught and restrained, their plots revealed. The council reconvened the next morning. The chamber was tense. Minister Kale rose, his usual stern demeanor softened slightly. "Jonah Rami has completed the challenge assigned by this council. His actions saved lives, demonstrated loyalty, and proved courage beyond expectation. The council must now deliberate carefully." Some members whispered doubts, citing tradition and law. Others, younger and more progressive, quietly praised the human. The chamber was divided, yet one thing was clear: Jonah had changed the perception of humans in the Suli Empire. In private, Lyra approached him. "The council may still debate the laws, but your actions have spoken louder than words," she said. "You have shown the heart of a human, and many are watching. They will remember this." Jonah finally allowed himself a small smile. For the first time he felt he belonged, not because of rank or power, but because he had acted with honesty, courage, and skill. He had faced the challenge not for glory, but to protect lives. That alone had earned respect, and in a world that often valued appearances and rules above all, that was rare. Night fell over the capital, the city lights glowing like stars. Jonah stood at the observation deck, looking out at the city below. The Empire had seen him act, had seen humans do more than repair machines or explore planets. They had seen humans care, protect, and lead quietly when it mattered most. He did not know what the council would decide about Lyra's words or the laws that forbade their union. But he knew this: he had earned trust. He had earned the chance to show what humans could be, and in the quiet of the night that was enough. The challenge had ended, but the story was far from over. Jonah's courage had inspired many, changed hearts, and shown a world that humans could be more than outsiders. They could be protectors, problem solvers, and steady hands in the chaos of the universe. And for Jonah, a simple human from Earth, that realization was both humbling and powerful. The next steps would be dangerous, political, and uncertain. But he knew one thing for certain: he would face them as he always had, with calm, care, and courage. The galaxy had begun to see humans not as strangers, but as something extraordinary. The council chamber was quiet. The long trial, the challenges, and the crises had passed, leaving a hushed tension in the air. Citizens across the Suli Empire watched the holoscreens, waiting for the final decision. Jonah Rami stood at the center of the hall, calm but aware of every gaze upon him. Princess Lyra was by his side, her silver-tinged skin glowing softly, her presence steady and unwavering. The council had spent hours in secret deliberation. Ministers debated the laws, the traditions, and the extraordinary actions of the human who had saved lives multiple times in recent days. Some argued that Jonah had broken tradition and could not be trusted. Others pointed out his courage, skill, and honesty, noting that the Empire's people had seen him act selflessly and wisely. Finally, Minister Kale rose. The chamber fell silent. This council has heard witnesses, observed the actions, and reviewed the outcomes of the challenges assigned to Jonah Rami, the human from Earth. The council acknowledges that his actions have saved lives, demonstrated loyalty, and shown courage beyond what most beings achieve. A murmur spread through the chamber. Jonah kept his expression neutral. He had expected formal words, but the council's decision remained uncertain. Kyle continued, "While our laws prohibit cross-species unions, we also recognize that the character and actions of an individual may inspire change. We cannot ignore the truth we have witnessed. Therefore, the council will grant the following. Jonah Rami shall remain in the capital with the princess under observation, but free from punishment. Further, the council encourages continued cooperation between humans and Suli engineers, recognizing the benefits of collaboration and trust. The chamber erupted with a mixture of relief, applause, and quiet conversation. Some council members smiled, admitting quietly that they had underestimated the human. Others remained serious, accepting the decision but unconvinced. Outside, citizens cheered, waving banners and hollow posters celebrating the heroism of Jonah Rami and the courage of Princess Lyra.